thanks for being here. We appreciate it. It's good to be with you again today. Again, we've got a great, informative guest, a guest with a great sense of humor, and best of all, a guest who knows what's going on. We're here with Scott Reuter today. Scott, it's good to be with you again. Thank you. I'm glad that you've been able to get out of airports and off of airplanes long enough to sit down and chat with me today. Thank you.
You're welcome, Tim. Good to see you. And yeah, I appreciate being home for a little while. We talked about that earlier. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Give us a little bit of background about you as we get into this, and then we'll get into the meat of all this stuff.
Background on me
Yeah,
or
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think
Just a quick background on
it'll
you
be quick. I
and
think a
why you
lot of
do it.
yeah, no, a lot of folks I guess hopefully know what I do, but I'm the chief appraiser and single family director evaluation at Freddie Mac. I've had a 35 plus year career in real estate appraisal. And roughly the first half of my career was as an independent fee appraiser. I worked with my dad, who was an appraiser, and then got my first job, kind of a bank job for a mid-sized Midwestern bank in Cincinnati doing review work, and then worked with a number of big companies, including GE, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, leading up to Freddie Mac. So it's been a great career. I've seen not every angle or side of this business, but I've seen this business from a few different perspectives, and I think that's helped me, particularly in my current role.
God, thank you. Okay, let's get into this now. You and I don't have a script. We're kind of
No.
winging. We do have talking points. But and we may not cover all of them if we get into a good discussion of what's going on here. But let's talk number one about Freddie Mac appraisal quality. What is looking for in appraisal reports that come into it, and very possibly what it's not looking for in the appraisal reports that come into it.
Yes, it's a really good jumping off point. And I think you and I last talked when I saw you at the AXE conference. And I think there's going to firstly be some through lines and consistent themes on some of our messaging and interaction with appraisers this year. And one is the one you just touched on, kind of what are we seeing from a quality or an appraisal quality perspective. And I think just the message out to my appraiser friends is the number one QC issue we see is unsupported adjustments. Period. We just don't see, and many appraisers do a great job. They really do. But we're seeing, unfortunately, in an overwhelming preponderance of the work, appraisers not really providing any support for adjustments. And so that's a segue to say, we're not seeing the requisite market conditions analysis or any market conditions support or adjustments being developed, time adjustments, if you will. And I just think I really don't know. I don't want to speculate myself what that reason is, but again, it's a reminder that it's a deficiency we see in many appraisal reports, and it ties directly to the appraisal quality.
Okay, so the appraiser uses $83.15 a square foot for the GLA adjustment. So it's not so much that the 83 bucks a square foot is right or wrong. It may be spot on. So what you're saying is the issue is the appraiser apparently is saying, I used 83 bucks because it was Tuesday and I had a burrito for lunch. And that was what you're saying is that's pretty much all the support there is for that.
Well, yes, that's right. And it's funny, the same conference I referenced that you and I were at, I enjoyed being there the full 2 days and listening to all the sessions. And the one that I really enjoyed was the two Colorado State investigators. They were just two kind of semi-retired appraisers, very knowledgeable, the nicest guys in the world. So you walk into that session thinking, okay, these are investigators, they're headhunters, they're out to get appraisers. Those were, in my opinion, those were the two nicest guys in the world. When stuff got referred to them, they were they'd reach out to the appraiser. Hey, we don't see any support provided for this GLA adjustment to your example. Is that in your work file? Could you send it over? Cue the crickets, nothing. Did you maybe put it here? And the real answer, again, with a lot of appraisers out there, is they didn't do anything. And I guess, maybe tying this more to a practical aspect for appraisers, if you're using the same adjustment rate for GLA across a wide band of property types and sale ranges, it might be an opportunity to review that, stop that behavior if you're not really developing any support. And are you using the same GLA adjustment rate you were using 5 years ago? I mean, we're seeing markets that have had dramatic price increases over time, and very few appraisal reports are using or developing or applying any time adjustments. So it's just a few different ways to say we're just really not seeing that being done. I don't exactly have a why. Maybe you might have a speculated reason why, but it's a point that at least I wanted to draw to a lot of appraisers' attention, that it is something we're looking at, and it's a deficiency we're unfortunately currently seeing in our appraisal quality.
Okay, let's talk about time adjustments. Now, there are macro markets and there are micro markets. Now, by saying you're not seeing more appraisers are putting in, I'm going to use the term time adjustment. I mean market to
I
market, but
understand.
everybody
Yep.
calls it time adjustment. Yeah. Okay, so the appraiser doesn't put in a time adjustment because the appraiser says, okay, in my micro market, I've not seen a change. Whereas you could go to the FHFA website, you could go to various other places, and in the macro market, you would see a change. And indeed, even with the change in interest rates, even with the political turmoil going on now, we're not seeing builders build a lot of houses countrywide. There are some places, but countrywide, we're not seeing a lot of new construction. We're seeing a stagnation or perhaps even a decrease in the number of properties for sale. So even with all this going on, prices are still going up. Now, I think basically, and correct me if I've got the relationship here totally messed up, but basically what you're saying is, well, you're willing to recognize that maybe in micro markets, there are stable or indeed possibly falling micro markets, despite what macroeconomic data may indicate. So then what you're saying is, yeah, appraiser, yeah, you've got to analyze your market. And in your micro market, you may have different data than we have in a corresponding macro market. But then please explain to us the processes you went through, the data you used in order to come up with that conflicting opinion. Because chances are you'd rather believe them than not, but yet there's nothing to believe. Is that basically what you're saying?
No, that's absolutely right. You put it very well. I mean, we trust the appraisers for a tremendous amount. And your example is spot on. Markets are dynamic and they move. And you can have a cost of 12-month period. You could have dynamic movement in the market depending on when certain sales transacted. And you can also, to your example of micro markets or submarkets, you could have submarket activity that's very different from a larger macro picture. So what we're saying is really very simple. Just demonstrate that. We recognize that. We recognize that, sitting from a Freddie Mac perspective, there are a lot of markets nationwide that we have to trust kind of indexes, and they're not perfect. So that's really, that's really where we need the appraiser. We need them for a lot, but we need them to tell that story that you just said. Look, I know if you pull up an index for fill in the blank, you're going to see X, but here's what's going on in this market, and here's some data to support that. We would be fine. And I think that's a different, maybe a better way to say what we're seeing and looking for when we pull some of these reports for QC. We're just looking for that story. Tying back to the two investors, they were just looking for something. They couldn't have opened the door wider for the appraiser to say, tell us what you base this on. I mean, we had one of our reviewers brought to our weekly team meeting. We had reached out to an appraiser for a little bit additional information, including support for their $40 across the board square foot adjustment or GLA adjustment. And the appraiser didn't respond. They later saw them on some social media page saying, Freddie Mac wants me to support my $40 square foot adjustment. What should I do? So not calling out an appraiser. Well, yeah, so
Well,
it's
support
just
the adjustment. Yeah.
the post could have been, I just picked a number, so now what should I do? And look, I get it. I'm an appraiser at my core, and I understand that there are a lot of pieces and component pieces of this process of developing an appraisal that I think, in the eyes of efficiency, in the eyes of just evolution of 30 plus years of doing it, there there appears to, this is my personal opinion, there appears to be we've as though we've kind of drifted away from a lot of fundamentals, and I just think it's a time to circle back and understand that. And it's funny, in preparation for this, I listened to a few of your posted interviews, and you had some great people, Tony Pastilli and Heather Sullivan, and folks that really know what they're talking about. And the through line and theme on many of those were all the leveraging of all the tools that can help support appraisers here and help them be able to develop a credible market conditions analysis, and develop that adjustment support and pull that into the appraisal. So anyway, it's a way just to say that would be like a takeaway to me, is there's heavy increased focus on appraiser accountability for their work right now and going forward. And I think that's just an element that I'm glad you kind of moved to the top of the list for discussion.
Okay, Scott, you mentioned earlier, your opinion was, etc. And I should have made this clear at the top. You are here because you are Scott. You are not Freddie Mac spokesperson. I apologize for
No, that's
being clear at the beginning. So
totally fine.
we've got it in here now. Okay,
Perfect.
now, okay, you you and I both have an appraisal background. You work at it from one end, while I have actively retired from appraising. My job now, my purpose now, is to work with other appraisers to avoid these mistakes, and when they've made them, to help them overcome them. Now, in speaking with appraisers, both in my capacity and just, for example, at the AX conference, just generally, sitting down over breakfast and just chatting. I've had appraisers, they'll lean in a little bit close and they'll look in both directions to make sure nobody's listening. And they'll say, Tim, I always use $60 a square foot because nobody ever taught me how to make a GLA adjustment. What should I do? Now, I said, well, okay, not to put too stark or not to shine too bright a light on it, but why don't you take a couple of classes and learn how to make GLA adjustments? So, do you think there are a lot of folks out there who, and I'm not jumping on anybody, this is not to condemn anybody or indict anybody, but are there some appraisers out there whose mentors, whose supervisors just didn't have a clue?
I think likely yes. Yeah, since we're speculating, and you mentioned the disclaimer, these are my views.
Yeah, not Freddie Mac, just
I
Scott. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you're talking to Scott. I think so, Tim. And again, it's none of this in my view. And I know we get, some of our comments, my comments get taken as though, we're kind of headhunting and we're out for appraisers. Could be anything further from the truth. And I think a lot of potentially what we're seeing, speculating, is maybe it is a byproduct of that. In busy times, we had a form, and we're migrating, thankfully, away from the form to a data set, which is going to be a more richer, a more robust way, a more transparent way, and consistent way for appraisers to tell their story. It's going to give us a greater view into the appraisal and the potential risk. I think it's going to also give the appraiser an opportunity to do something that we've really gotten away from. And I don't know whether it's just the lenders, us, have accepted a certain quality. We define minimum standards as a minimum, and it seems like the minimum developmental standards have become the developmental standards. Oh, Fannie and Freddie say I don't have to develop a cost approach. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. And it'll make its way through our systems. It's not to say that's the right way to do it. So anyway, kind of digression there, but back to your question, maybe yes. Maybe there were trainers who trained a trainer who trained a trainer who were trained on shortcuts, and you always use this and you always use that, and you always use, $2,000, $5,000 for a bath or whatever the silly thing is. And that's just kind of perpetuated. And now that we're shining a light And now that we're asking for that adjustment support and that development, I think there are a lot of appraisers that are stumped. So it ties back to friendly reminder, just reinforcing what we're looking for to say, look, if there's an self-reflect, we're a little slower now, self-reflect if there's things you need to work on or you as an appraiser would benefit from. I think turning into the education, I think a lot of the education providers are really putting out, from what I can see, very relevant curriculum. And yeah, find out where you're deficient and just really lean in. And it can be a long list. I may have mentioned to you in the past, I tried to put my money where my mouth is. I still keep my general certification in Ohio. And we know CE kind of can be on a spectrum of some stuff that's a little easier and quicker and maybe a little more challenging. And I tried to, and I'm continuing to try to challenge myself to take stuff that's a little more difficult and has a little more rigor, and maybe where I'm deficient. I took a cost approach class. I developed an appraisal and done a cost approach myself in a while. Great course. One on manufactured housing, one on rural appraisal, just things that there's a lot of great content out there. There's great experts. And I think maybe to broaden the topic a bit, I think that's where appraisers can really help benefit themselves going forward, is not only just brush up on the fundamentals, but also look for an area where maybe you can specialize and you can become that market specialist. We don't need appraisers as much on cookie cutter, low risk appraisal work. We just don't. We're going to need them, absolutely need them all day long, but on more complex, more different, more unique, custom homes, new builds, things that models and large automated valuation models are going to struggle with. I think that's where we need appraisers all day long.
Let me ask this question. We talk about CE and we take classes on appraising and blah, blah, blah. And again, this is Scott, this is not Freddie Mac. Would Scott recommend that maybe appraisers go to the local community college and take a creative writing class to learn how to write better, write more clearly, write more logically, such that instead of having to write 4 or 5 paragraphs to explain something, which is time consuming, write it in 1 paragraph, which is time saving.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think that there may be less emphasis on that going forward, but I think good communication, good writing skills is absolutely fundamental and foundational. So I would personally say yes, even though we're moving in and migrating into an environment with the new UAD and the new data set where we're enabling the appraiser to tell a lot more of the story with data and discrete data elements versus free-form text, which I think is another kind of byproduct and tangent that is good in one sense, but it can get appraisers kind of tangled up with words and phrases. But I would say yes. I would just humbly say, look across the list of things, and it may not even need to be community college or like adult education related. It can be just simple CE. I would look across the breadth of offerings and just, if across, start with CE maybe as a best practice, with whatever your requirements are for your state. Take one that's maybe a little more you don't have to boil the ocean or tackle everything, but maybe take one that's a little more challenging, one that's a little more time consuming. And I don't know, Tim, you and I are probably about the same vintage. I mean, I remember back in the day taking, my dad was a society guy, so I took the 101 and 102 classes as a young guy out of college. Those were like 1 and 2 week classes. I took 101 at Purdue University over 2 solid weeks, and it was ended with putting an appraisal together. They kind of gave you a thick packet of sort of dummy data that you worked through, and you had 2 senior appraisers that worked the room. And I mean, through those 2 weeks, and of course you didn't tackle everything, but it really gave you that opportunity to understand, and conversation and examples and things would kind of follow that really helped you kind of understand the process more. So, but anyway, tying back to your question, I would just say creative writing, I'm a big fan. And then just any of the other sort of fundamental or foundational classes that would help enhance some of their appraisal and appraisal development skills.
All right, good. Thank you. All right, let's talk about ROVs,
Okay.
reconsiderations of value. That's the big thing right now. Now, have there been any recent announcements on this? Any recent revelations? Any greater light knowledge that we need to be aware of? And again, Freddie doesn't write the ROV requirements; these come from on high. But is there anything else that, what is it that we need to know? I know the GSEs have all adopted ROV protocols,
Mhm.
and they're
Mhm.
rather narrow, quite frankly. And they're, in my opinion, they're not out to get the appraiser's soul. But
Mhm.
I think they're rather balanced myself. But just ask my wife. I'm probably wrong. But give us give us Scott's thoughts on that.
So yeah, so it's a great topic, very topical. I think it was first of May, Fannie and Freddie published a new ROV or reconsideration of value policy that kind of formalized the framework around consumer or borrower initiated appeals or disputes process for appraisals. And the big goal is to hopefully help standardize certain elements without being terribly or overly prescriptive that would help that process. The root of it from a lender perspective is we're requiring our sellers, which are our lenders, that they have a published ROV policy that contains certain elements, including disclosure to borrowers that they have this right to appeal and certain documentation requests and a validation request, including the fact that before an ROV gets to an appraiser, there needs to be some level of review or screening done by the lender, right? Their job is not just to keep passing through appraisals to Tim Andersen because somebody wants to ROV. There needs to be some lender involvement in that. And then protections around that from to the appraiser side, right? To ensure that these that the requests comply with AIR, that these can't get into any pressure, that we recognize and respect appraiser independence, that that there's enough requisite and relevant information provided to the appraiser. It can't just be Scott Reuter's unhappy with Tim Andersen's appraisal. So it's like, well, where's the error? Where's the material defect? Was there a sale? I'm not saying comparable sale. Was there a sale that the appraiser didn't consider that you think was maybe relevant? And define a time frame for that from the appraiser and what needs to be done. So that was announced in May, and I think it's going to go. It's effective in our guide at the end of August. So our hope is, and again, I see a lot of things, maybe like a lot of appraisers, I see it through an appraisal lens. I'm hopeful, Tim, and it's just that at this point that this helps the ROV process. So I talked to a lot of appraisers, and anyone who's been in the field, it's been a while for me. ROVs can come in any shape and size. You can get one that's well thought out, well put together, has a couple pieces of relevant information, and it's helpful. Or other end of the spectrum, somebody sat and provided you, back in the paper days, pages and pages and pages of sales and very little to go on, and it just usurped, whatever, an hour of your life to go back in and address that or provide the commentary that you needed back to the lender. So anyway, that's a way to say I hope that having a structure, even a kind of some sort of a format, will legitimize the incoming ROV requests or disputes as they come from a borrower or consumer through a lender to the appraiser, and then also can provide the appraiser some structure to know, okay, this has gone through a process. We've put a max of 5 additional sales to consider. It was always what's the joke, when the appraiser gets the underwriter call, I just need one more comp. So, and the joke is like you're keeping it in your top desk drawer because I knew you were going to call, so I saved my best one for this phone call, kind of thing. I think appraisers really have already done their work, but there may be something they miss. So, but anyway, from a development perspective, hopefully they'll take these certainly with the requisite gravity and seriousness they need to, and really see if there's anything that maybe they missed or needed to reconsider. we're all human and we don't always get things on the first pass. So I'm hopeful that, appraisers certainly look at this in the same light.
Scott, thank you. You mentioned that there's a structure to this. So basically, what that means is some borrower can't just pick up the phone and say, "I demand an ROV." Uh, excuse me, they
They
can,
can.
but before that gets
Correct.
back to the appraiser, there are certain protocols the lender must follow. And one of those protocols is there's got to be a reason for it, not just that the borrower didn't like the number. In other words, the borrowers got to say, well, the house next door, which is a model match, closed last week and the appraiser missed it entirely. That would be a good reason. But just, well, no, it's got to be higher than that because my brother-in-law, who's in real estate in Alaska, told me that my house in Maryland had to be worth more than what the
Exactly.
appraiser said it was worth. So
Exactly. Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
that won't happen uh, given the filters that the GSEs have put in. Am I correct in that?
well, yes, and that's certainly the intent of the overall process. And then as it ties to the borrower piece, to your example, that's right. So we're all unhappy with things in life, and I don't say that in this context to minimize that at all, but you can be unhappy. I'm unhappy at times, right? So, but when it relates to an appraisal, um, so the two buckets, the rights and the responsibilities. The rights for the borrower is they need to understand they can absolutely dispute an appraisal they're unhappy with, but it can't just stop there. It needs to move into why. What did you identify that was inaccurate? Again, deficient, unsupported. To your example, what additional data do you have? Is there additional information or sales or comparable sales? Um, and then a protocol for that responsibility for them before submitting it, a lender review of all that to say, yeah, I think this is new, and then now it needs to go to the appraiser. So yeah, that's the way it's intended to work, and that's how I'm hopeful that it'll work going forward.
So these protocols, in other words, what the lender has to do before the appraiser gets the ROV, what the borrower has to provide to the lender before the appraiser gets the ROV, and
Mhm.
then what the appraiser has to do as part of his or her response to the ROV is pretty much, at least generally, set out in your selling guide. And it's not hidden. You don't have to have a special key and know a secret handshake. It's just you go to the selling guide, you look it up. Oh, okay, this is what I got to do. So it's in the past those didn't exist. Now they do. So
Correct. Yeah, and that,
okay,
and really, and pardon me, Tim, hearing you say that, this is a big step. This is a big first step in kind of formalizing this. And one thing we will do, and maybe folks don't really think we do this, we do keep our ear to the rail. We do encourage feedback and commentary. And if there's pieces or parts of this that we need to hear about that maybe aren't quite working as intended, that's something I would think we would listen to certainly and take very seriously.
okay, Scott, thank you. All right, Mr. Scott Reuter, not representing Freddie Mac, although he is their chief appraiser for residential services, but talking to us today, sharing with us his opinion on many comments. Scott, your email address is not a secret. If
No,
anybody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
yeah, and I actually welcome that. Scott underscore Reuter, REUTER at freddiemac.com.
Excellent. Thank you. We appreciate it. And you're going to be getting back on airplanes pretty soon, so I'm sorry to hear that. But I've cut my travel way back.
Yeah,
And
I know you have. I was going to tease you that I was hoping to see you, but may not likely see you at some of the fall conferences. But I know that's not exactly your favorite thing to do, and you've
it,
cut back for a lot of reasons. So good
it's
for you.
there was a well, I got on the plane once in Atlanta, and I don't know where I was going, but I was one of any number of places, and the flight crew recognized me. And at that point, I knew I was traveling to.
That was a
So
moment God spoke to you and said,
yeah,
"Tim, this is what
maybe
you
you
should."
need to stay home a little bit more.
Ah, that's
And
funny.
that's what we're doing. Well,
That's
Scott, thank
funny.
you. I appreciate it. Please let me extend my best to you personally and your family. And
Thank
I
you.
do look forward to the next time we get to shake hands.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And everybody, thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being a constant listener. I appreciate it very much. Thanks. Bye-bye now, everybody.